Well, hi there. Welcome to the Look-See for April 2025. This month's recording is a little bit late because I went to speak at the Ozark Mountain UFO conference April 11th to 14th. And even though I thought I would pull the Look-See together while I was there just wasn't the time. And I was having too much fun talking with all the people who were attending there. So that said, the keyword I received for this next 4 weeks, was seesaw. I thought this was a pretty obvious symbol suggesting that we will be up and then down and then up and down for the entire month. The seesaw is also something for children to play on when they're at school or in the park. And I wondered if we were to keep in mind that we should approach the events of the month with a sense of play, of fun, learning, and of enjoying the up and down nature of events and life without stressing out. The word also suggests that we will see things maybe in a new way, or maybe we'll say, I saw that a long time ago, maybe. And now it's turning out to be true or something similar. So that's our keyword, seesaw. Okay, so in this month's Look-See, the focus seemed to be on big global and national issues and the major reorganization that's taking place in so many countries and states. So I hope you'll be able to get something good from all of it. But let's begin. Number one, a major theme running through everything I saw this month was reorganization. When I went out to look a little further than just the next month, I saw Mark Carney at a microphone. And then Donald Trump talking about money and finance, and lots of people feeling very uncertain. I wasn't sure how all these fit together. But as the whole vision was closing, I saw a picture of North America, and I had the feeling that the picture of Mark Carney at a microphone was because he was making some kind of announcement about the future of Canada and the U.S. being one entity. Donald Trump might have been trying to tell people that this would help everyone financially, but people had a lot of questions. The scene ended with the letters USNA, which probably stood for United States of North America. And you know, when I saw that, it took me back 25 to 30 years to early talk from those who were introducing the idea of a new world order. In those days, the talk was that they were going to reorganize the entire world into three zones, financial zones, 3 war zones, 3 trade zones, and so on. The American zone, which included North America, Central America, and South America. The Euro-African zone, including all of Europe and Africa. And the Asian zone, including all of Asia, Melanesia, Australia, and New Zealand. So this vision of Carney and Trump, it was kind of discouraging to me because I had the impression that the New World Order people were still pulling major strings. They had simply dropped the label New World Order and talk about that, and they were just moving to the next stage of the plan. So all of this should push us to think about who we are, what we are doing here, and what we can do to shape our personal experiences into something that benefits the self and the greater world. Here are several questions to ponder as you think about that. First, can I still enjoy life, develop my consciousness, and move into greater wisdom, grace, and power while living in a new world order? Next, if I don't know what the New World Order will actually be like, How certain am I of my answer to that first question? And lastly, are you planning to have any input into the future of our world? Think about those. Number 2, recently the mainstream news was reporting a lot of protests against Trump and Musk. It seemed like hundreds of protests were happening across the entire country. As I watched these protests unfold, I wondered what they were protesting. Were they protesting the truth of our situation? Those who argue with the truth usually lose. Were they protesting having to wake up, and get to work on a new life? Because that's what's coming at us. None of the protesters said anything about moving forward. In fact, they said very little at all. It appeared that they just wanted to cause trouble. Later, I learned that those protests were organized, recruited, and paid for by money from George Soros, the guy who made it his life's goal to destroy nations, mostly because of a hidden drive to get revenge on the warring nations who destroyed his family in early life. His goal has been to eliminate nations in order to prevent them from being able to go to war at all. Number 3, the situation in Europe is very unsettled politically and militarily. In looking at this, I could see a growing split, mostly sparked by Italy and Hungary, but then spreading across all of the southern and eastern countries. Germany was struggling badly. It was coming apart. And the East Germans were having no part of what the government had been saying. I expected the East German people to be much more antagonistic toward Russia because of their history, but they see signs of the same kind of treatment from the German government that they had from the Russians back in the days of communism. And they may pull away from Germany in a major split. I also see a death, an accident that is a disruption of power at or near the top of the power pyramid. Von der Leyen kept coming to mind, and Zelensky or his wife. I thought it was a female. So we'll see. Eventually, England, Denmark, and a Baltic country, which I thought might be Estonia or Latvia. I'm not really familiar with the Baltic countries. But those 3, England, Denmark, and a Baltic country, become the odd men out, still pretending to fight Russia while dealing with big internal fractures, revolts, riots, and the reality of their situation, which forces them to admit there is no point in going to war if they can't win. And they can't. They would lose in every way, militarily, politically, financially, and as a cohesive population. When I went ahead 6 months, I saw more chaos. The continued effort to fight Russia had turned Russia into a real enemy, a serious enemy. The man playing Putin has been forced into a position of deciding to conquer all of Europe because he cannot tolerate the ongoing demonization of Russia by neighbors who just keep pecking away at Russia, keep threatening, lying, undermining, sanctioning, and everything else they can think of. At the same time, though, the Russian people were reaching their limits. They had enough of war, and they were saying no. There was a quagmire of stagnation for a time, but Donald Trump was having an effect on the global situation because he just kept saying, stop the killing. Let's make a deal and work together. People didn't trust him because it looked like Israel was still controlling the U.S. However, the longer I watched this, the more it looked like Trump was laying a trap for Israel that few people understood. And the trap wasn't really for the people. It was for Netanyahu and the people behind him. Anyway, it looked like Israel and Netanyahu continued trying to control the world using the U.S., and Trump appeared to go along with that. But things came to a head when Trump suddenly stepped back, leaving Israel wide open and vulnerable. Egypt, Turkey, and Iran, who are all working together, stepped in to end the Israeli government. A lot of their people, the Israeli people, had already left Israel because the situation there is so threatening. And in addition, it looked like Trump had suggested moving a lot of people out of Palestine so they wouldn't get caught in the crossfire that's coming. But he couldn't say that, or he would have given away the whole trap. Of course, people were very short-sighted and shallow in their perception. They accused him of just wanting to get rid of the people so he could build hotels on the land. But that was only a plausible cover story. The bottom line is that Netanyahu will be taken out if he refuses to make peace and make room for the people of Gaza to live normally. And it looked like even if he does cave to pressure, it looks like he will be taken out. So all of this unfolds in this manner if Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu are not assassinated in the next few months. Losing any one of them changes the game board and all of the moves. So if that occurs, this entire scenario shifts and changes. We'll have to come back and look at it again. Number 4. The system of finance we use around the world, and especially in the West, is always spoken about as if it is a way of building great wealth. I just don't understand how a system based on debt can be a reasonable or sensible way of building wealth. If every dollar is a loan from the Federal Reserve, those with the greatest number of dollars are in the worst position because they have the greatest debt. They are the ones who will lose the most if the system fails, and a debt-based system always fails. Number 5. As I was driving home from the Ozark Mountain UFO conference, I was thinking about the number of people who have paid off their mortgage. This was a number I reported some months ago. It was something like 65 to 72% of Americans have paid off their mortgages. It's like, wow. But the point I want to make here is that I suddenly saw that if the financial system fails, the great number of people who basically have everything they need, including some of the old knowledge of how to do things, how to make things, fix things, etc., they're going to be the stabilizers for the younger generations. There have been enough warnings of collapse and financial difficulties to allow those in the older crowd to get ready, and many of them have done so. Parents and family are always the first banking system for their children. They're also the first social services system, the first police, the first teachers, and the first job market. Everyone over the age of 65 knows this, and they'll step back into these roles if they need to. The money system is going to change. We don't know how that will go, but we do know how to stop look, and listen before freaking out. So we also know how to step up with experience and common sense. And Americans have enough stuff stashed in rented storage units to make sure that everyone has whatever they need. What I saw is that we will be okay regardless of what happens. It was nice to see that. Number 6. Spain came up, and with it came a vision of rain and floods, followed by a city where officials were thrown out in protest against lack of response, exasperation, a feeling of being stretched to the breaking point, stretched to the breaking point. I saw big protests and riots and people burning things down. I had the impression that maybe the rain and the floods had occurred earlier and there was little or no response from city officials. I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that this is our life. We're responsible for ourselves. We need to reorganize, to clean things up when disaster strikes. And even though there can be some help coming from officials, it's really up to us. People in Spain were keenly aware of that fact. Number 7. I saw an untimely snowstorm with big trucks piled up, tipped over, and smashed. Cars were mixed in the mess. It was really an out-of-season snow, and no one had taken the weather change seriously or the weather predictions seriously. Some people were seriously hurt. So slow down, people, slow down. The weather is a force that must be dealt with. Be good to yourself. Number 8. Antarctica came up on my radar and I saw fighting going on there. I never think about Antarctica or the stories that circulate about it, so I didn't really know what to think about what I saw happening there. When I finally had the presence of mind to ask what the fighting was about, I was surprised to hear a voice that said, control of weather equipment. Maybe there's some kind of secret operation happening there? I don't know. Number 9. In my travels across Canada and the US these past few months, I noticed a number of big industrial-sized buildings going up in many places. Either manufacturing is returning to America, or somebody is not afraid of a collapse, not worried about a financial slowdown, not waiting to see how many more good workers will die from COVID's aftermath, and not concerned about what the population demographics are or will be. What do they know that we don't know? They are moving ahead with life and plans for the future. Even in my little town of Lawton, there is a renaissance going on. For years, nothing changed here. And then, all of a sudden, the entire downtown area was remodeled to make it more cozy. It has been redesigned for people, relationships, and foot traffic. The sidewalks were widened to accommodate tables, chairs, and benches for people to sit outside the restaurants on Main Street. Big flower beds were put in, a number of them. A farmer's marketplace and a tiny town plaza was built. And now a new factory is going up, courtesy of Bosch, a German company that makes precision tools and household appliances such as washers and dryers. The world headquarters of Whirlpool Corporation is just 30 miles away, so maybe they're going to make parts for Whirlpool washers and dryers. Maybe. Anyway, my point is that some people are getting ready for the future by helping to shape that future. And whether it gets easier and more luxurious or more difficult and challenging, we can roll with the changes. We are quite resilient. Number 10. I see lots more signs that housing will be changing as the weather becomes more unsettled and unruly. Years ago, I started watching a small company named GeoShip because they were talking about homes that looked like homes I had seen in the future. The company was started by two guys. I think one was a builder, and maybe the other was involved in some kind of science. I'm not sure what got them going, but they realized that there had not been a major advance in home design and construction for hundreds of years. Worse, homes were becoming unaffordable for almost everyone. They were being built with toxic and unsustainable materials, and they didn't hold up worth a darn in big storms. The two men started playing with ideas and information, and the result was a whole new set of designs, materials, and construction techniques. No more leaky roofs or shingles at risk of being torn off by high winds. No more drywall and flooring needing to be torn out and replaced after flooding. No more walls subject to molds and mildews. No more need to deal with gutters, repainting, or replacing vinyl siding. If a home flooded, the owner might have to replace some furniture, but not the basic structure. You just sprayed down the walls and the floors and went back to living. I didn't know if this company, GeoShip, would make it or not, but they did. Housing came up while I was looking at the storms I saw in April, May, and June, and it looks like people who were repairing and rebuilding after those storms were seriously looking for a better way to deal with housing. I think that better way is out there, and the homes of the future are on their way. Number 11. This is something I've mentioned in earlier look-sees, but it came up again. So I think it's important to mention it once more. It's time for people to begin making a serious effort to rebuild and restore their health. Whatever you've got going on, it can probably be made much better or even healed completely with a change of diet, addition of nutritional supplements, some regular detox, some exercise, and drinking more water to flush out the old body materials that are being replaced by new and healthier tissues. Robert Kennedy is working to make people aware that processed foods just don't make the grade when it comes to providing the nutrition that keeps you healthy and energetic. So pay attention to this whole issue of good health, because if Trump's tariffs remain in place, any prescription medications coming from China or elsewhere are likely to get a lot more expensive. Number 12. Speaking of tariffs, I know a lot of people are afraid of rising prices, but the real reason for the tariffs is to force people in other countries, other leaders, to negotiate their agreements with us. From that point of view, they are working. Other countries have expressed an interest in keeping the trade doors open with us. However, when I look at the impact of tariffs as we move into the future, I was dismayed to see that even though they are working to some extent, The past behavior of the U.S. has seriously wrecked our reputation and our social capital across the world. Many people are angry with us for meddling in their affairs. Now that we're no longer the kingpin, they don't really care what happens to us, and they don't want to deal with us. Yes, we are still considered to be the richest nation with the biggest economy, and we're a very juicy consumer market to get into. But if our wealth is coming from paper money that nobody wants, what are our options? If none of our people can afford to buy anything because everyone is out of work, how juicy will our consumer market be and for how long? Additionally, if the products we make are priced high because the American workers have to make enough to keep their mortgages paid, their cars operational, put food on the table, and pay their utilities, then we would need to have a big deflationary event or series of events that bring our wages in line with the rest of the world. For decades, wages went up and up, but still could not keep pace with the cost of living in America. Why was the cost of living going up? Because big corporations wanted a bigger profit every year, so they raised their prices. They called it growth, but it was really just inflation. Wages in America have gone up just enough to keep the workers surviving and believing in the job as something worth doing. A problem in our future, though, is that the next generation of workers does not have the education needed, does not want to work the way we worked, and does not have the job-shaped head or the mindset that earlier generations had. They don't see any sense in working if it doesn't pay well enough to provide a good life. They want to start at the top, and they have no interest in starting at the bottom. So when you combine all of this, the many layoffs now occurring and yet to come, the tariffs and the price increases they will create, the low level of willingness other countries have to work with us, the prospect of a serious deflationary period, the aging of U.S. citizens who want to retire and have already purchased most of the big ticket items they need in life, the decline of the petrodollar as the world's reserve currency, the impending move to a new financial system, and new generations of kids who really don't have the same work ethic. We're looking at a period akin to riding the rapids down the Colorado River. Everybody's going to get wet, and a few might fall out of the boat. Throw in the possible appearance of ETs, new technology, and the spread of war, and you have a recipe for changes so rapid and so comprehensive that everyone is going to need to take up breath work as a practice to keep themselves calm, clear, and centered. Heads up there. Number 13. The other day, I was reflecting on the harsh side of life here. My father was drafted into World War II. He never said much about the war. But one thing he did mention was the terrible shock of realizing he needed to kill another kid about his age or be killed. What a heartbreaking situation to be caught in. Then there is the wildness of life on a farm and the creatures who need to kill in order to eat, while farmers are trying to protect their livestock. I also felt a deep sadness for friends or relatives who ignored the body and now cry in fear and frustration when it breaks down and won't heal? And what about those who suffer when they are dumped unceremoniously out of jobs that were contributing very little to a world that works for all of us? The world changes constantly, and it has been my observation that many pay no attention to the need for everyone to work steadily and on purpose at work that makes a better world. Those who don't pay attention to the world often get run over. Every single one of us is enmeshed in a system that we cannot afford to ignore. This is not a world in which every man is only for himself. We are all in it together, and no one is more important than another. When are we going to get this? Number 14. I saw a meeting and heard some conversation coming from what I thought was the U.S. House of Representatives, where they were discussing some kind of change in age limit. I thought it had to do with voting age, but it was the same argument as years ago. If we lower the voting age, we need to lower the drinking age. And nobody wanted to lower the drinking age. Of all the things we need to be taking care of at this time, a change in voting age or drinking age is not one of them. Number 15. The war in Ukraine grinds on, and it looks like it will continue to grind on until Ukraine no longer exists. It appears that Russia is going to make sure that Ukraine remains in the Asia, Melanesia, Australia, New Zealand global zone, and that no biowarfare factories, adrenochrome factories, or sex and slavery trafficking have a home there. Period. Number 16. I think this is our last one. A few weeks ago, I was thinking about the advanced races and the fact that they were once where we are now. In a shifting, drastically changing world, facing an escalation of lies, anger, and vengeance, greed, and war. They understood that these were all things that regularly destroy people. I wondered how they managed to turn their situation around, and I had the thought, they must have had a cohort of good leaders who had the attitude that nothing was working and too many people were being hurt. These leaders must have been aware that whole populations were without enough water, food, or the little joys and pleasures that make life worth living. Maybe they said, let's turn this around. Enough lies. Let's have truth, even if it makes us cry. Enough anger and vengeance. Let's have forgiveness. Enough disease and suffering. Let's get healthy enough to live well on our own terms. So I was imagining that they had to take little steps over a long period of time, steps that involved big changes in every area of life, health, media and communication, their education, parenting, everything. I imagined that the process would take generations, and I wondered where we could find that kind of steady leadership when it dawned on me that this idea of needing better leaders was just another example of expecting someone or something from outside the self to come along and lead the way, make it easy, set up a new society or new rules and enforce them. This line of thinking brought a message from my people. And the gist of that message was, You are still looking outside the self for someone to save you. Do not do this. Yes, we have faced what your people are now facing. There was no mass turning. One by one, people either made deep personal changes or gave up and died. Every person who joins the advanced races does so alone through their own choices. They often think they have failed at life because they could not or would not conform. However, they discover greater life among the advanced races. We offer excellent energy and health, much greater longevity, answers and insight into many questions carried by Earth humans, deep connections to Source, interesting work, and good companions in beautiful settings. I had to laugh at that last. There were some personal messages tacked on to the end of that regarding my teaching and the progress being made to help people open up and step into a more expansive consciousness. But the overall message was that we are doing better than expected, given the short amount of time since we began waking up. At the end of the conversation, when I asked if they could share any secrets to accelerating the whole process of transformation, they replied that we didn't need to accelerate. We needed to stabilize. They closed by saying, it all comes down to personal practice. So I think we are already deep into the process of transforming and just need to recognize that and stabilize the transformation. Personally, I would say that as soon as we have finished learning from what we've just been through, we will stabilize quite a bit. Learning is synonymous with change. And we are still learning, so change is everywhere. Let it be. Let yourself learn, and let that learning make you wiser. So that's it for this look-see. For those who are watching and listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's very dynamic and it changes according to what we are doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. And we do that by making a choice. We take some kind of action. We put something together or we take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine the path and the outcome. And of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way or prepare for what might look inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help things along. So it's important to look ahead and assess what is happening, what's going on, and where are we going, so that we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening. Keep your eyes open and your wits about you, and we'll see you in May, which looked like it was kind of quiet. I hope it will be. Take care.